Alaska cruising has been the same for almost 40 years. You have Holland America, Princess, Norwegian, big ships, multi gen families, bus tours, buffets, formal nights, all those things. There's nothing wrong with that model, but it's the only model that so many sailors, so many travelers have known. I'm Cam DeJong, your host, and welcome to a new episode of the Know Where You Want to Go Travel podcast. And today we're going to talk about some of the changes happening in this Alaska cruise season and what these changes could mean for you or potentially not for you, because maybe these changes are not a fit for your sailing experience and for what you're looking for. So let's kick things off right now with this introduction of Brilliant Lady and Virgin Voyages and how Virgin Voyages is getting involved in the Alaska sailing season. So Brilliant Lady is Virgin Voyages' newest ship, and it launched last year. And just this month, April 2026, it debuted in Los Angeles and is still setting sail there. And you're going to find the shift up to Seattle next month as it starts its debut to Alaska with mostly 7-night itineraries with some amazing ports. And you'll see these ports are similar to those that you're going to have with some of these other cruise lines that I mentioned at the top of the episode. And you have to understand the differences there, and we'll get into that a bit later. But one of those big differences is that Virgin typically spends a bit more time in many ports. So you have more time to be able to get off the ship, not rush through an excursion and so on there. And that's going to be the same as it is in other ports across the world where Virgin Voyages sails and into Alaska as well. Looking at this philosophy of Virgin Voyages, and we know it's adults only, and a lot of these Alaska cruises are, or at least they lean towards an adults only environment. They're not always restrictive. There's cruise lines like Celebrity and Holland America that will allow kids, but in most cases, it's adults only sailing these cruise lines. So with Virgin Voyages having a significant number of cabins that are sea terrace, you're able to spend a lot of time right there without having to even get off the ship to see so much of the coastline and see so much of what the beauty of these Alaska sailings offer. The fjords, the inside passage, like I mentioned, the glaciers, and that could be from deck 17 down to deck 7 when you're at the dock. So a lot of great things there. But let me stop myself before I go further, because I don't want this to sound like a total fanboy Virgin Voyages experience, because we're going to get into that as well. So you might have gotten to this point and said, okay, Cam's going to sell me on Virgin or try to sell me on Virgin. And that's not the point of this podcast, and it never has been. The point is to show you some areas and where you might not be a fit for this. And we're going to get into that. So I'm kind of stopping myself, just into this just a bit, because I want that to be important before you hit the stop button and go on to another podcast and say, gosh, this is just a sales trip. And that's not what I want. So let's look at some of these differentiators for Virgin Voyages first. And then I'm going to tell you about why it might not be for you. And it comes down to some of the things that happen on the ship. What happens when you get on the ship? What happens when you pay for a cruise, when you go to take a cruise adventure and you spend X amount of dollars just to have a cabin to rest in? But then you get to the end of your cruise and you have this big bill because of restaurant surcharges, drinks, soda, water, etc. Virgin Voyages, 20 plus restaurants, zero upcharges, no buffet. Whereas you have other cruise lines that sail into Alaska that you'll pay anywhere from $35 up just to eat at premium restaurants. And, these restaurants, Test Kitchen, Extra Virgin, The Wake, Gumbe, Pink Agave, Rojo, are all included on Brilliant Lady. And then you have the galley, which is a beautiful alternative to the buffet, all fresh to order, amazing things there. And again, you're saying, this is a sales pitch, Cam. What are you doing? I'm getting there, I promise. So, yeah, some great things there. Bar tab, you can get a premium plan with Virgin Voyages that includes a $15 a sailor a night bar tab. So you pay as you go for your drinks if you want to, but of course in advance you can buy a bar tab package, and we do have a bar tab calculator on camjohntravel.com that you can look at to see fairly accurately what you should be expecting to purchase in advance to be able to get the benefits there. With Virgin Voyages versus some others, you have Virgin Voyages has shore excursions like other cruise lines do, and they call them shore things, and very curated, very interest based, very optional there. And you're not going to have a bus to a show kind of model. You're going to have rainforest, heritage. You're going to have a lot of culture there. You're going to have the ability on at least one itinerary to be able to take a helicopter to where the dog sledding is. And it's not necessarily an experience to watch dog sledding or take part in it, but you get to see the dogs and so on, which is something that's been very popular with sailors that I've been working with. Whale watching, you get this, like I said, the history, the gold rush, the adventure done at a different level, because again, you get to spend a bit more time in these ports, and you get to spend more time on board learning about these things as well, but not in a stuffy classroom. And you're going to have some differences there as well with the environment on the ship. And that's really going to get into what I'm talking about there, which is the real story here. Is I've had a lot of sailors reach out to me, potential sailors, saying, "Hey, I want to go on this Virgin Voyages Alaska cruise. I've never been on Virgin Voyages before, and I just want to try it out." Well, let me stop you right there if that's you. These cruises are going to cost anywhere from, for a couple, it's going to cost anywhere from 4,000 up to 15, 20,000, depending on if you get a rock star or mega rock star. That's a big investment for anybody, even if you have the disposable income, even if you have a vacation fund that's overflowing with dollars right now. That doesn't mean that you should just step aboard a Virgin Voyages ship. I've worked with a number of sailors who wanted to go, and I let them go. And I'm not going to stop you from sailing Virgin Voyages. And they appreciated working with me, but it wasn't the vibe they were looking for. And I always wonder, when I talk to myself, when I think to myself, I do talk to myself too. But when I think to myself about this, what did I miss? And I'm starting to realize what I'm missing over time. But I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing this with Alaska, because I think there's an expectation that because Virgin's going into Alaska, that they're going to tone it down, that it's going to be an educational seminar at sea, and that there's going to be a similar experience, and you're going to get really good food, and you're not going to have to pay extra for it, which is great. But you have to understand that there's still going to be activities. You're going to still have your Scarlet Night. You're still going to have your shows. You're still going to have your entertainment, and you're still going to have a vibe that's considerably different than Princess, Holland America, and other cruise lines. And I see a lot of sailors that are looking to come across from these other cruise lines without an understanding or an expectation of what they're going to experience on Virgin Voyages. So we want to look at that. You have to understand the proposition there. I don't want someone to have a good time on a Virgin Voyages cruise. I want them to have a great time on that. And that's why it's so important, and this is why episodes like this exist. Is, yes, I'm going to, and if you listen to the Know Where You Want to Go travel podcast in 2019, Virgin Voyages hadn't launched, so obviously I wasn't talking about it, and I talked more about general travel over time, and I will continue to do so. But I do want to be clear that, yes, that our agency sells only Virgin Voyages in the world of ocean cruises. That's all we sell. We don't sell anything else. We are hyper niched on that because we love it. And we every day learn more and more about who it's for, but more importantly, who it's not for. And that's what integrity is all about. That's what having a good ethical code is all about. A good moral code is all about, is that if it's not a good fit for you, then we'll tell you. So, who is Alaska on Virgin Voyages not for? You might be saying, well, you already told us a bit, but let me get into some specifics here. Multi-gen families, of course, with the grandkids or the kids. Obviously, you can't bring a kid on board. You have to be 18 or older. Holland American Princess are going to be great options for you there. There's nothing wrong with those cruise lines. You're going to find them to be great. Traditional formal nights, ballroom dancing, things like that. That's not Virgin Voyages, and it's not going to be Virgin Voyages. And there's an expectation that it will be on these cruises, and it's not. Buffet centric cruisers. I've had sailors come to me saying, I don't mind buffets. In fact, I prefer them sometimes. Does that mean Virgin Voyages is out for them or for you if you believe the same thing? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. But I will tell you that if you go on board and you think that the galley is the best experience on there, again, that's okay. But it doesn't mean that Virgin's the best fit for you at that point. you should want to enjoy some of the other options. There's 6 main dining facilities on board with very diverse menu types. I would argue that even if you don't like those, you could go to the dock for great food, the pizza place for great pizzas. You could certainly go to the galley every now and then. But again, I want you, and I think you want you to maximize your experience. So others want longer Alaska itineraries. There's some that are a little bit longer, but mostly 7 nights. So this is the first season of it. You want to make sure of it and make sure it's good. And I will say this too. If you're looking for a picture perfect Alaska experience with Virgin Voyages, I say wait till 2027. Let's see how 2026 goes. Let's get the sailor feedback. I have a number of sailors that are going to be giving feedback to me on their Alaska adventure this year. And I'm glad they're going in 2026 because I feel like they're a good fit for Alaska. But I want for some that are on the fence a little bit, make to make sure that this is the right fit for you next year. So who is it for? It's for adult only cruisers that want to see Alaska without 4,000 people, including kids, running the deck. Virgin Voyages is 2770 max, not 4,000, 5,000, not tons of people on board with kids. It's for foodies that don't want to pay $50 extra per night for a real meal. It's also for solo travelers. Virgin Voyages is one of the best solo cruise lines in the industry. Now, you have to be adaptable as a solo traveler, and you have to understand that not every solo sailor is the same. I think that's another episode that we're going to have in the future on solo travel on Virgin Voyages or on cruises or in travel in general. And it's also for first-time cruisers who don't want the traditional cruise experience. Virgin Voyages brings in more first-time cruisers than just about any other cruise line, if not any other cruise line. It's also for Virgin loyalists who have done the Caribbean, maybe even Europe, Greece, Portsmouth, Barcelona, whatever it might be. They want something new. Millennials and Gen X who want Alaska without the kind of the slower vibe. So it's amazing there. So there's, this being the inaugural season, like I said, you want to make sure that this is for you. You want to make sure that you're not looking for something that's going to be perfect. Virgin has 12 happenings cast members for most cruises. This year, or for the Alaska season, they're adding 2, a naturalist and a lumberjack, two new cast members. That's going to be new for Virgin, of course. And it's going to be new for everybody that steps aboard. So there's going to be some learning and some evolution that's going to happen throughout this season. And you need to be open-minded to that if you want to sail this year on Virgin Voyages with that. With that said, so I always ask any sailor that comes to me, when they come to me and say, hey, can you give me a quote? Or can you tell me about this? Typically it's, can you give me a quote? I want you to make sure that Virgin is a good fit for you first. So I say, go take the perfect cruise quiz at camjohntravel.com. We'll put a link in the show notes for you and make sure that this is the cruise for you. I've covered quite a bit in this. And this is, again, I always gun for 10 minutes in my episodes, and this is a bit over there, but it's important, is that the target audience that I want to have at listening to this point in this podcast episode is someone who is convinced without background at all that they should be on a Virgin Voyages ship going to Alaska this year. I want you to think twice about that. I want you to understand how different Virgin Voyages is. And you can learn more about that in our blog. You can learn more just going directly to camjohntravel.com. You can ask me questions about Virgin Voyages, and I'm glad to give you an honest answer, because I don't book sailors just to book sailors. I'm not here to hit a quota blindly in my travel career. I'm here to make sure that this is the right fit for you. And if it's not, the quiz will tell you which cruise line might be a better fit. And I will help find you a travel consultant, a travel agent that will better fit your need. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe, comment, send me an email anytime with any feedback. We're going to have some great interviews coming up in future episodes. Like I mentioned, we'll talk about solo travel in the future as well. Thank you so very much. Keep being awesome, and we'll talk very, very soon. Have a wonderful day.